The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Egils Levits, President of Republic of Latvia. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Egils Levits, President of the Republic of Latvia, and to invite him to address the Assembly. Excellencies, I call for order. Please remain seated. Please go ahead, Your Excellency. You have the floor.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I confirm Latvia's readiness to cooperate constructively with you. Our agenda is full and still growing. To quote George Orwell, contrary to popular belief, the past was not more eventful than the present. Let me focus today on a few fundamental themes. First, the upholding of international law. International law is the basis for world peace order established by the United Nations Charter. At the core of this order is respect for the sovereignty of states and prohibition of the use of force. Starting a war of aggression is the gravest threat to our world peace order. Nevertheless, 7 months now, Russia has been waging an unprovoked and unjustified war against a sovereign UN member state, Ukraine. Let me stress, this is not just a regional security issue. Russia's military aggression against Ukraine threatens global security and stability. In the 21st century, Russia maintains a 19th century ideology of imperialism, colonialism, and racism. Russia invaded Georgia in 2008. It illegally annexed Ukraine's Crimea in 2014. It had used increasingly aggressive rhetoric towards other neighboring countries. These are all manifestations of its imperialistic and colonial ambitions. Denying another nation's right to exist, promoting the idea of supremacy of Russians and their special missionary role in the world. These are all contemporary expressions of racism. That is exactly the opposite of what the United Nations stands for. Mr. President, dear colleagues, Russia's war in Ukraine has caused a humanitarian disaster. A third of the Ukrainian population has been forced to leave their homes. Russia is preventing Ukrainian-grown food from reaching the world market. Also, Russia uses its position in the energy market to exert pressure. High energy prices maintain high levels of global inflation, which most dramatically affects the world's most vulnerable populations. Russia continues to spread false narratives about the cause of the global crisis in food, fuel, and finances. These lies must be overturned. Russia alone is responsible for this crisis. Mr. President, we, the law-abiding member states of the United Nations, are responsible for supporting Ukraine's self-defense and stopping the aggressor. Russia's ability to finance the war against Ukraine must be limited. Global sanctions in the fields of finance, trade, transport, and energy, as well as restrictive measures against individuals and legal entities, must be maintained and strengthened. Belarus, being equally responsible for enabling Russia's military aggression against Ukraine, is also being sanctioned. Since the beginning of the war, Latvia has spent over 0.8% of our GDP on military, economic, financial, and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. We stand with the brave people of Ukraine. The heroic defense mounted by the people of Ukraine is bringing success. Today we learn the partial mobilization has been declared in Russia, as their once mighty army is overwhelmed. The blitzkrieg envisaged by President Putin has turned into a long nightmare. In another sign of desperation, Russia plans to hold illegal referenda in the coming days on the annexation of the occupied territories to the Russian Federation. This is a blatant contravention of both Ukrainian and international law. Latvia will not recognize the legitimacy of these referenda and their results. I call on the international community to do likewise. Mr. President, dear colleagues, impunity means invitation to further crimes. Therefore, the aggressor must be held accountable. The International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court have already started proceedings on particular aspects of Russia's war against Ukraine. The European Court of Human Rights has also initiated proceedings. However, a legal gap remains. No international court has jurisdiction over the main issue, the starting of a war of aggression, the gravest violation of the Charter of United Nations and international law. Therefore, I call for the establishment of a special tribunal. The main task of the special tribunal would be to investigate the responsibility of the Russian state in the crime of aggression. After the war, Russia will have to pay reparations to Ukraine for damages. The special tribunal could be part of an international reparations mechanism. The special tribunal could be established on the basis of a resolution of the General Assembly by another international organization or a group of like-minded states. Mr. President, let me now turn to the sustainable development and climate change issues. Agenda 2030 is a common roadmap for overcoming our challenges and creating future-oriented, sustainable, and inclusive policies. This year, Latvia submitted to the United Nations its second progress report on sustainable development goals, highlighting the areas of education, gender equality, youth participation, and international cooperation. The implementation of Agenda 2030 is also the overarching goal of Latvia's development cooperation policy. Over the past 30 years, Latvia has developed expertise in democratic processes, good governance, socio-economic changes, and gender equality. Good governance, especially strengthening of the rule of law and democracy, accounts for the more than 40% of all support provided by Latvia. As a member of the Peacebuilding Commission, we are sharing our expertise on societal resilience. Joint efforts must also be continued to address the consequences of climate change, including through development cooperation efforts. For example, in Central Asia, Latvia has been working with the promotion of clean technologies. particularly related to the protection of climate, is a problem of global justice. Latvia supports the view that the greatest polluters should bear a greater burden for the protection of the climate. Latvia consequently advocates for more justice and for more solidarity on the global agenda. Mr. President, we are convinced that digitization is one of the most important agents of change. Latvia supports innovative and proven digital solutions that promotes the efficiency of public administration, public participation in decision-making, and the creation of new economic opportunities. Let me now highlight security and fundamental rights in digital space. The digital space is an integral part of our lives. It has enormous potential to contribute to the sustainable development of nations. Therefore, we must resist attempts to turn the digital space into a battlefield where international law is challenged and basic rights are ignored. Use of people's data in ways incompatible with their human dignity, rights, and security must be prevented. The global internet must be open, free, reliable, and secure. We support the proposal of the UN Secretary General to agree on a global digital compact, which should reduce the digital gap between the developed and developing countries. Both the COVID pandemic and current geopolitical challenges highlight the need to strengthen the resilience of society by combating disinformation, promoting media literacy, and strengthening media freedom. Accordingly, Latvia is actively preparing for the upcoming 11th Global Media Information Literacy Week. Critical thinking skills build our immunity to disinformation. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, the aggression by a permanent member of the UN Security Council against another UN member state undermines the basic principles of the multilateral system that we have been building for decades. This situation once again confirms that a meaningful reform of the UN Security Council is necessary. As a first-time candidate for the Security Council in the 2025 elections, Latvia takes the responsibilities of membership very seriously. We will strive to make the Security Council more effective, accountable, coherent, and transparent. Latvia supports a more just, equitable representation by member states, notably from Africa. Mr. President, the Baltic states have much to contribute to the work of the United Nations. For us, the horrors of war, occupation, and harsh rule by a colonial power are within living memories. So is the fight for liberty and restored independence, and the transition to a successful, sustainable economy and the rule of law. We have no wish to dominate or intimidate anyone. We reject the idea of spheres of influence. As smaller states, we have an existential interest in effective multilateralism. Therefore, Latvia will continue to contribute to the work of the United Nations in the spirit of optimism and determination. Thank you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Latvia for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency